We'll start off in Detroit. Monty Williams getting what's he getting? A 6 year.
$78 million. That could be up to nine figures, depending on incentives. Now, this Detroit Pistons team has the fifth overall pick in this year's draft, with Cade Cunningham coming off injury last year. Hardly played, was also not at 100% when he was in year two. But I feel like for the Detroit Pistons, one of the biggest things we see nowadays with young teams is you may accumulate a ton of young talent, but you need a coach that can actually maximize it. And when you look at what Monty Williams did with the Phoenix Suns, he comes in for a franchise that, well, they were the worst team in the NBA in multiple years leading up to his hire in 2019. They won 23 games in 2016, 24 in 2017, 21 in 2018, 19 in 2019. He comes in 2020, 2019-20. They won 34 games with the addition of Ricky Rubio. Go to the NBA bubble. And as we talked about at the beginning of the show, where the NBA bubble kind of felt like a new season, they went 8-0 against high-level competition. Then that off season, month or two later, they add in Chris Paul. They go from what was a 19-win team in 2019 to a 51-win team in 2021, the second best record in the NBA, completely changing the narrative, the culture, and the outlook of the team moving forward. Their second year with the group, with Monty Williams and Chris Paul, they win 64 games. They go to the second round of the playoffs, and a couple different things happened. One, there are reports that some players in the team contracted C19, and ultimately, his players didn't come to play in a second round playoff game, game 6 and game 7. And they got obliterated by Luka and the boys. I don't know how people can look at that series and blame it on Monty Williams when, hey, look, Devin Booker and Chris Paul just played really poorly in the first half of a game where Luka was better than them.
Let's talk about the because the Suns move is in the past, and it is what it is. They're moving on. There's rumors that I guess maybe Monty is maybe too much of a nice guy. We don't really know. But as far as the Pistons move, I will say this: what I like about it, right? I do like so much that they've committed 6 years, right? Now, obviously, they could jump out of the commitment really at any possible time they want, but I like that it's at least out there, and Monty knows that there's leash to this, right? I hate when teams hire a new head coach and it's like 3 years or whatever. Like, if you really believe in this guy as a new head coach, then you got to be willing to commit. And that's why I hate the hot potato with coaches in all of sports. You see it in the NFL all the time. Guys get fired after one freaking year done. Steve Wilkes is a great example. It's like, you didn't even give the guy a shot. Like, Jeff Fisher got how many years with the St. Louis Rams, couldn't win Jack Diddley squat. Like, come on, man. Like, or Marvin Lewis. I mean, he got in the playoffs, but it's just,
this is what we saw D'Amico Ryans in the Texans this last year.
Yeah, and I said the same thing about that. I love the length of the contract. So I like Monty. I think he's a good head coach. I don't think he's great. I think he's good. Actually, I think he's really good, very good. He's in that range. But it's good that now he can set a culture. I don't know if Cade Cunningham is the guy. I haven't seen much of him. He got injured. That's not a great sign. But he's going to come back. He's young. What is he? Is he like 21? He's not even 21 yet, probably 21, 22. So he's got to grow into his NBA, his man body. And we'll see how he is in 3 to 4 years when he's starting to really, get things cooking probably. But yeah, they still got a lot of work to do, Detroit. They've got to fill the team around. That's why they're one of the bottom teams in the East in the NBA for a very long time. They still got some work to do. So yeah, it's a thumbs up move. A step in the right direction, but still a lot to be seen and to be determined with these Detroit Pistons.
What I feel bad about is I think Monty Williams has shown that he can play. He can coach winning basketball. That he can coach. He showed that he could take a team to the NBA Finals. And one, he gets let go. Probably, I'm with John on this one. I think Phoenix is just looking for a scapegoat and just decided to use Monty Williams for it. But for him to be left with a team like Detroit, rather than one of the big fish out there that are looking for a head coach that can compete into next year, I'm not too fond of that. I could see him. I saw him more going to a contender than a team that's probably 2-3 years away from making some noise. But now, I mean, he's already in Detroit, So the one thing I'll reiterate what John said: when you have young talent and you have all these picks, what good is it if you don't have somebody to develop them? What good is it if you don't have a coach to lead them? So in that case, Monty Williams is an A+ hire, and it's just a matter of if the organization is going to invest in it now. It's not just the young players that you got. Are you going to be able to spend some money and bring in the necessary players to develop these guys as well? Because it takes more than just coaching. There's your player coaches. There's the proper vets that you got to bring into an organization, because
Mhm.
they can go from how many games did they win this past year?
19.
A 19 win team to a 30 win team. That's a plus, but it's year after year. But like you guys said, a 6-year contract that shows that, okay, we're in this for the long haul. Obviously, a lot of things can change. And like Brandon said, you can find yourself 1 year in and then you're out. But I think, I think he's the right guy for the job if you're actually going to invest in your youth.
The Pistons actually won 17 games this last season, and they had the worst record in the NBA. And I think 2 points to hit on, Justin. Cap space and veterans. They have $40 million, the fifth most in the NBA this offseason. But at the same time, one move that I did like from their front office was bringing in Bojan Bogdanovic, who this year very quietly had one of his best seasons. To talk about the young core briefly, I think Cade Cunningham is going to be an elite player. The one concern was that they had quite literally no floor spacing to open up the game for him. And then they're asking him as a rookie at 20 years old, which he did pretty well in, to run an offense when he's kind of a wing guard hybrid. Be Luka Doncic when you're more similar to Jason Tatum in year one. And it was actually allowing him to get into the rookie of the year race. By the end of it, he had a great case. But I think the next level we saw this year was Jaden Ivey coming in. He was also top 5 pick out of Purdue. Much like Cade, as his rookie season went on, he got better and better and better. And so you have two young guards that are going to be one of the best backcourts in the league. Then have a kid in Jalen Duren out of Memphis who, at 18 years old, I think he's just turning 19 now. He's built like Dwight Howard with elite rim protecting and shot blocking upside. And that's supposed to be like your third or fourth best player in this team. So they're so young and there's so much room to grow here. I actually think what did it for Monty was that they're paying him $13 million a year. This is one of the 10 biggest contracts in the history of North American pro sports. This is life-changing money for a guy that, think of it, 20 years ago in the NBA, I mean, like the NBA salary cap was a quarter of what it is now, right? So this is a huge contract. He's also got 3 years left on extension the Suns gave him last year for $21 million. So this guy's going to be making $20 million by 2 different franchises. But I think it's deserving because what Monty Williams did for Phoenix was shift an entire culture for a franchise that felt kind of hopeless. There are years there at Devin Booker where the only Suns coverage was Stephen A. Smith pleading that the team would trade him to the Knicks. And that was the only media coverage they would get. And within 1 year, they were in the finals. Some of that goes on them acquiring Chris Paul, but they had to build a system that was predicated on ball movement, and that elevated Chris Paul in his age 36 and age 37 seasons to get back into the MVP discussion, even if he wasn't getting votes, right? So it felt like the Suns re-energized not only Paul, but they saw the growth and development of Mikal Bridges. Before he broke out in Brooklyn, with the Suns, Mikal was playing really well the last month of his tenure there. Cam Johnson tears his meniscus. Even still, he was having a career year. You look down the Suns roster, you saw a lot of player development, and the only gripe I ever had of Monty Williams was that in the playoffs, I disagree with his playoff rotations. I thought he should have been playing Damian Lee over Landry Shamet. But for the Pistons, you're in a much different timeline, right? If you're going to be complaining about Monty Williams's bench decisions and the conference finals, that's a pretty big time step forward from what you've been the last 6-10 years since the days of Ben Wallace back in the 2000s, right? So the Pistons are trying to build the foundation, but more descriptively, they're trying to build an offense around these two guards that's going to maximize their skill sets. With the Suns, it was mid-range shooting and ball movement. They had a philosophy, a split-second dribble pass or shoot. They weren't holding the ball. They weren't isocentric. And so everything was connected. I think with this Pistons team, you're going to see a lot of the right habits build from Williams, establishing, more accountability for these young guys. But at the same time, he's going to be focused on driving their player development to another level now that they're on their second coach.